we talked about meta in Guild Wars 2. The problem is, if you look at this, that this website here is Wingman. Yeah. And it's a website where you can upload your logs, so from ArcDPS to this website, and you can then see how you're faring against other players. And you can see how many players are actually playing specific classes and specific times. And you can check for raids, fractals, and stuff. And I wanted to talk about the meta, how it developed and why people perceive it completely different than what actually people are playing. But very, very big disclaimer here, you have to actually check what you are looking here at, because it's people that have ArcDPS, so it's only a fraction of the community, and they upload their logs to complete them. And that might be people that are really tryharding to actually get the highest damage numbers on a boss. So it's keep that in mind and take that with a grain of salt. But you can still see what people are playing and how the meta develops. So let's talk about the meta. Let's start with raids. So that's the last thing is overall. We don't really care about that for the most part. We want to look at the second to last row here, or column, because there you can see the current balance. And it's really sad to say the least played class is Warrior. And that's a big point here. I would say Warrior isn't bad, not at all, I think. But it's very exchangeable. Yeah, I feel like the balance in that regard is actually in Guild Wars 2 is like you can play every single class, every single elite spec, but if it doesn't bring anything really, really good or anything really unique, you are like Warrior, and you have only, let's say, 4% of the player base playing Warrior in raids. Zoom in 500%. Is there a Mirage player? Maybe. Yeah, that's true. That might be the least amount of players playing Mirage. Yes, that might be true. But if you compare to the whole class, Warrior is the least performing class. It's actually, in my opinion, a big warning to ArenaNet that they really have to do something about it. It's actually, they have to do a lot of that. Yeah. And I think when you conclude, another thing is also that Thief is the same boat. It's a little bit better than Warrior, but not a lot. And it's actually crazy because Spectre, in my opinion, is actually really good. It's just not as easy to use as all the other healers. So I feel like either make it easier to play or make it even better so that people play it, or just, I don't know, Thief is in a weird spot as well. I think Thief and Warrior, those need some help in PvE. I feel like they are really underplayed if you compare to others. It's actually crazy. Some of those Mirage logs are my Mirage healer. Ooh, that sounds like a really crazy cook, I have to be honest. Big gaming, yeah, 0.62%. Yeah. What is the Warrior niche? Exactly, there is no niche for Warrior, and that's a big problem. And that's why I'm advocating for giving Warrior banner spec. I think Warrior needs something that is unique, and if they would give banners that are providing stats, or at least some kind of crazy utility to the party, then people would play Warrior again. Just my take there. Why is Firebrand doing so good right now? Isn't Heal Chronomancer just better? I mean, can't look at the last column. You have to look at the second to last, because the last one is overall, because you had a big era where Firebrand was really good. If you look at the second to last, where it's currently our meta, Firebrand isn't doing that hot. It's okay, but it's not crazy. Compared to Chrono at least. If you get Warrior banners back to the way they were before, we will just see resurface of Banner Slave, nothing more. I think that's okay. In my opinion, I just want something that people that they can play Warrior again. I feel like there are a lot of people that like Warrior, but they are just not playing it right now because it feels very bad. It has DPS and that's it. The niche is not there. And I would really like to see nerfs to Virtuoso and Chrono in that sense, that the healing Chrono should get nerfed really hard in my opinion. It's really broken. And you should nerf it, but I'm not sure if they do it. They should maybe buff all the other supports, if that's their way. And they should rework Mirage completely. So that the Mesmer here is like way too crazy. How much Mesmer has in terms of this column, it's way too much. I think Mesmer needs to go down. And you can clearly see the buffs of Mechanist. And also, this is also Condimech here, but this is just Power Mech and Condimech, it's crazy. Yeah. Ele needs some love as well. I think Elementalist, in my opinion, the biggest outstanding tooth, I think Catalyst is fine. I think they should buff Weaver and Tempest, in my opinion. Those two are better to buff than Catalyst. Catalyst, in my opinion, is already really strong. I think it doesn't need buffs. I think it's just people don't like to use the spear and stuff. Do Warrior have meta support class or just DPS? They have typically only DPS or quickness DPS Berserker. Those, or Alacrity DPS blades on. Those, you can only play them as DPS. There is no crazy good healing build. You can make it work. It's better than Quickness Harbinger healer, but it's not, I would say it's a B tier at highest as a healer. Elementalist Thief Warrior needs some love, it seems. Pretty much what you expect. Yeah, I think that's definitely true. I think, in my opinion, they should... I think it's actually very interesting that you see that many Heralds still, even though Herald got nerfed quite hard. I think Renegade needs some love and Vindicator. Those two are also underperforming. But I think maybe some Magnus, and other than that, I think Engineer, Guardian, and Ranger, I think those three are actually quite decent. Necromancer is also decently split, probably one of the most split classes. And then I think Mirage needs some complete rework, and I think you should nerf Virtuoso and Chronomancer. Even though I like to play them all the time, I think they are too strong. You can run Healer, though. Quickness Heal Warrior and Alacrity Heal Bladestorm are super slept on in my opinion. I didn't say they are worse than other healer builds. Oh, I didn't say they are completely garbage. I'm just saying they are, strictly speaking, I think a Heal Chronomancer, a Heal Druid and stuff are better. Yes, you can make them work. They have surprising amounts of heal and decent utility, but I feel like they are slept on for a reason, because they are just underperforming when you come with the flexibility that a Chronomancer, for example, has. So I think they just need some buffs to make it a little bit more unique. Give them some kind of niche that is actually useful in different scenarios, so that you would say, okay, in this fight, I actually want a warrior, and I don't want to play warrior just to play warrior. I want to play the warrior because I think it's actually a decent pick here, because it has some interaction that makes sense. Untamed is also barely on this list. Yeah, the reason for that is Untamed. You see a high amount of Soul Beast here, even though Soul Beast is, I would say, relatively hard. I think the reason here is that a lot of people would rather play a Soul Beast than an Untamed, because Untamed is a little bit worse in terms of burst than the Soul Beast. But I think Untamed could get some buffs, I agree. I think Untamed is... I mean, not in DPS, but maybe in utility. Maybe give Untamed some kind of step access for allies, and you would see it jump up, definitely. Most players are used to Soul Beast, and strictly speaking, it's burst harder, so there's really basically no reason to run Untamed if you have a pre-made comp. Exactly. And you have to keep in mind, this is stats from people that already have arc DPS that upload their logs. So you have a very try-hard, so to say, few here. And then you will typically have people that are actually decently well at the game and play Soul Beast because they know they have a good burst there. So if you would look at the whole community, which we can't, but if you would look at that, I guess Untamed would be a little bit higher up, because people like Untamed and it's actually quite fun to play as well. I want to play Warrior to Smash. Yeah, I think Warrior just have high DPS and a decent niche, then I think it will come back for sure. If you have a build Heal Chrono right now, why would someone invest the resources into Heal Warrior instead? Exactly, there is no reason. And I think it's actually, you would grieve yourself, because you would invest time to actually learn and build a Heal Warrior, and then you would perform worse, even if you have the same experience level than on the Chronomancer. It's just, it's really bad. It's really bad, yeah. You're comparing those builds to objectively OP heal builds. The whole reason Chronomancer and Druid are the best is because they have everything and absolutely insane amounts of CC. In my opinion, the niche of Heal War is how easy it is to provide boons. I think, in my opinion, I totally agree. I think they should just nerf the overperforming builds like Chronomancer, Druid, maybe even Scourge and Quickness Cutter, Heal Cutter, so that you and Firebrand, so that the other more, so to say, worse builds right now, strictly speaking, have their opportunity to shine, because they're very easy in terms of how they provide the boons, or maybe they have crazy amounts of passive healing like a Herald, or maybe they have crazy amounts of ranged in the heal kit like a Staff Catalyst or something like that. I feel like this should be looked at, but it's currently just like you have to beat Chronomancer and Druid, and they're just too good. You know, how can you beat those? I mean, I don't know, just pressing one button and having all boons? I guess that would be better, yes, but if they would include that, then I guess the game is probably dead anyway. I feel like I think they really have to think about nerfing supports. They really struggle to do that in PvE, I really think so. Because they really think that people will die because of that, and not kill bosses they killed before. But I feel like that's the only way. I mean, we can look at strike missions, are probably quite similar. Not that crazy different to raids. But if you look at Fractals, I think Fractals look a little bit different. You actually see a big spike in Renegade if you compare it to Raids. Renegade 1.5 and Fractals 5.7 actually almost. You can clearly see Revenant is better here, especially Herald goes down, but Renegade goes up. It's really good there. It will never happen unless an equally OP contender comes along. Raids are already giga dead, and that would push out even more casual groups, which would get carried by the stupid OP supports. Yeah, I think it will not happen, but I personally think that's the only way to save some kind of balance and make Warrior, for example, playable at the current state, other than just making it giga broken as well. But if Soul Beast, Scrapper comes here way harder than Mechanist, you see Viva instead of the others. It's really clear what I just showed 2 weeks ago or something in my Fractal builds tier list. And you can clearly see it's the case. I was not wrong here with my statements about S tier builds. It's clearly the big contenders here: Soul Beast, Scrapper, Chronomancer, Virtuoso, Renegade, Firebrand, Dragon Hunter. They are S and S plus tier. It's just they are so people like to play it. Yeah, Viva comes back. Yeah, Viva is really good at Fractals. Do you think that fights are too easy when you have heal Chrono and Druid, or would it be fine to make all healers OP? I think at this point, I personally think they should make all healers OP. I think that might be a hot take, but I think at this point, if they don't want to nerf them because they are scared that people can't do them, just make all OP and we just have all fun in the game with different classes. I think it's better than to have 2 that are OP and everyone plays them, because the others are just not OP, balanced. You would never play them because you would just waste everyone's time for the most part. If everything is broken, nothing is. Yeah, that's the move. Yeah, it's true. That's how ArenaNet thinks apparently. So maybe they buff all the others too, because they did never nerf Chronomancer and Druid since they came out as in this broken spot. If you nerf support, newer players won't be happy that game got harder for them compared to the previous more experienced people now. Definitely. I mean, there were times, if you look back at the, let's say, older raids when they came out, or when then there were some really clear builds that were played, you know. So I would say raids were way harder when they came out, but the argument still stands, of course. If you nerf it now, then people might have that start out later will have obviously a harder time getting into it then. Definitely, I see it. Yeah. But in Fractals, I think it's the same. I think in Fractals it's even worse that there are a lot of builds that are just not playable at all. For example, look at Thief. Only Spectre is played. It's mostly because of the CMs, but all the other, and Warrior as well. It's so crazy how little balance. Even though all the specs are viable, most players that upload their logs here are very limited to the absolute best classes because they are just very much on top. I would argue the builds were more OP back in the day when Heart of Thorns first came out. It depends. I think I would agree there were some really broken things in there, that Alacrity wasn't a boon and that kind of stuff. But the DPS of those builds was way lower. Yeah, so I don't know the exact numbers, but if you look at the best DPS builds back then was Tempest. I think the DPS number was maybe, I just pull a number out of my head, but it's probably lower than 30k. And if you think about that currently the quickness DPS is expected to have that. The DPS, I agree that you're right. The game, the general direction of was very broken of the builds, but the DPS was way lower. So that means that you have a way longer fight. There's more room for error, and broken builds can carry you through this longer fight. So in total, I think it's a little bit harder to say if it's harder now, harder back then. I would say personally it was way harder back then because we don't know about the mechanics. We were not really into this raiding mindset of 5 to 10 player content. But I agree. I think back then they had crazy mechanics with Druid and Chronomancer for sure. Although compared to the left side of the chart, the game is looking pretty balanced. yeah. I think that if you just look at the development, I would definitely agree. I think especially in Fractals, where you had like 5 classes, and now you have at least 10 to 15 that are decently playable. Definitely. In raids, it's a little bit different, I would say. There were already a few classes being played, a little bit more than in Fractals, but nowadays, obviously, it's way better. Definitely. I think the balancing got better in that regard, how much is playable, but I feel like if you compare the big contenders, I feel like it's actually not that different. You know, Chronomancer, almost 20%, Chronomancer at 14%. So I think there are still the top 5 builds are still quite big. So now is the question, how much of Guild Wars 2 population consists of tryhards? That's a really good question. I don't know. I would really like to see some data on that. at some point they said only I think under 1% of the community is raiding. I don't know if that's still true. I'm not sure if 5% is actually way too high. I don't know. I really would like to see some numbers there. How much people actually engage with specific parts of the game. I know that a lot of them are actually crazy in terms of open world. I think the biggest, by far biggest number are just open world players. I think Fractals, especially Tier 4 Fractals, are actually somewhat popular. I think it's a decent thing. Strike missions, Ice Root Saga strike missions as well. But if you come to raids and Fractal CMs especially, I think those are actually not that. And if you look at dungeons, it's probably you can count them on one hand how many people there are. No, not really, but it's not that high. Yeah, but it's sad, definitely. The tryhard community in Guild Wars 2 is really dying out, so to say. Especially if you look at competitive modes as well. PvP is like there are 10 people playing that are really tryhard. Yeah, that's just how it is, I guess. And in PvE, it's also not looking that good. I think Guild Wars 2 is very much alive if you are a casual gamer, but if you are tryhard, it feels like people leave. Yeah. Can you rely on wingman distribution and apply it to the entire player base? No, you can't, sadly, because it's only, you know, it's very skewed because you only see the people that actually have Arc DPS and upload their logs, and this is only a small fraction of the already small fraction that plays raids and fractals. Please let me know your takes in the comments. I also hope you liked this video. If you did, be sure to leave a like and subscribe for more content like this. As always, thanks to my dear supporters on YouTube, Twitch, and Patreon, and I hope to see you all in the next video.